What's going on, guys? Captain Parby here. I thought I'd take some time to record a video in regards to all this stuff that's just happened in OPTC, One Piece Treasure Cruise. I've been away for a couple of days. I have been tweeting the entire time. If you don't follow me on Twitter, at Captain Parby with 2 eyes, make sure you go follow me on there to keep up with all the good goods. Where do we even begin? So from my recollection of the entire series of events, we had a situation that occurred where there was issues with TM Jinbei. Now, mind you, I wasn't experiencing any of these errors purely because I had achieved my 10 million points and I had already stopped playing. But there were errors that involved people unable to actually clear the bosses in the maps. I heard stories of people doing multis and losing their gems but not actually gaining any of the characters. People were feeding dupes or tomes or items in general, and those were being consumed without actually being reflected on the characters themselves, and a whole plethora of issues. There were a lot of new error codes that we hadn't seen before, and the game kind of went into a meltdown. So as you can see on screen, this was the first tweet that came out, December 16th. The game has experienced emergency maintenance due to an in-game error affecting gameplay. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience and thank you for your patience and understand why we resolved this issue. At first, we were kind of a bit frustrated, a bit upset about this whole entire situation, because the previous TM we also had an error where there was a point error with how many points people were earning at the very start. The game had to get shut down. It got resolved, and then we had a kind of like resolution period. So we kind of waited some time to get back into the treasure map, and then we revolved back and started playing the game again. And then we had an extra day of TM just added on to the very end of the schedule. However, in this situation, it kind of went a bit deeper than that. But the reason why we were also upset at the very beginning is that we had just presumed that the error that has just occurred was just another one of these problems. We didn't understand how grotesquely large that this problem was going to be. On to the next tweet here. It's insane because this tweet happened almost 5.5 hours later. We are still addressing the in-game issue. We are currently addressing the in-game issue, but it is expected to take time. We'll announce once there is an update. We apologize. So at this point in time, you have the game is still down. The game is not, you can't log in. It's not a problem of being unable to play treasure map. It's actually just a problem of being unable to play the game at all, which is ridiculous. And again, this also kind of falls into the caveat of us being super duper upset about the situation. And I can speak from personally, and as I was basically subtweeting the whole time I was away, that it was kind of stupid that the game is still down. And I was personally pretty annoyed at the dev team, because it's just back-to-back TMs that you've had this same issue occur, or what we assumed a similar issue occur. And it's kind of unacceptable from a development team. But, you know, with those two tweets aside, the main crux of everything is this letter right here. This is, I'm just going to make it leave it like this size. It's this letter here. Regarding the emergency maintenance of One Piece Treasure Cruise, and then that was the date. One Piece Treasure Cruise is currently under emergency maintenance. We apologize for the inconvenience this may have caused. The following is the current situation of the maintenance underway. Due to the continued patronage of many users over the years of the game in service, the amount of data records of each user has exceeded the limit of the original game's design, which necessitated for a fundamental fix with how the data is handled. As a response to this error, we will be transferring the exceeded data to a temporary space to allow users to resume their gameplay. The emergency maintenance, which also includes this data transfer, may take a couple of days. After the temporary remedy of the data transfer is made, we will be conducting a major fix at a later date to prevent any further instances of a similar maintenance or similar error to occur. We thank you, blah, 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 blah. And then they said they'll announce things further. Whoa. This letter's crazy. So when this came out, I was flabbergasted. I was shell-shocked, because on one hand, you want to get annoyed and pissed off, and I will get into my reasons as to being so upset about things. But then on the contrary, this shows that Treasure Cruise has far exceeded any of the expectations that Bandai initially had for the game. Bandai clearly did not expect not only the game to last 8.5 years, but to have as many users it's a very positive thing. Like, can we is this whole thing like actually a good thing for Treasure Cruise? That's kind of where I'm getting at. But as you all know me, I'm the critical guy. I'm the OPTC commentator. The problem I have with this era is that when it comes to data, when it comes to data services, when it comes to data warehouses, when it comes to any of those things, a team, a company, an agency, whatever you may call it, should know what their data limitations are. Plain and simple. I understand that the OPTC dev team is under the umbrella of Bandai Namco Entertainment, and maybe Bandai Namco Entertainment has only allocated X amount of space and they weren't keeping track of things properly. I think that that's kind of a fault in the entire situation. I think the issue at hand is that your development team should be privy to any and all data issues, at least in terms of storage. Okay, there might be data leaks, there might be data problems. That kind of stuff can prop up when things don't mix well. However, when it comes to storage, which is what clearly it seems this era occurring, your team should be aware that we are approaching our limitations. We are approaching our safe point. Our margin is growing smaller. Therefore, we should be preparing to transfer this data, or we should be aware or notify of what's going to happen. And in turn, everything should be understood by the development team, in the sense that you should be able to look at where your limitations are and prepare in advance. That's kind of the gist of it. Like, that's why I'm a bit upset, is because for the most part, you would assume any kind of big gaming corporation or development team or any sort of data-centric, organization, you should be definitely aware of what your limitations are and how and at what point do you actually meet those or reach those limitations. That's where I get upset with, because as a development team, you should be aware of where that limitation is and you should be planning in advance. Naturally, maybe this crept up on them. Maybe, obviously, like, the amount of allocated data or the way that they handled their data wasn't privy to their expectations of lasting as long as they did. However, you need to know these things. You need to have planning. You need to have strategies in place and processes and implementations to allow you to mitigate this massive problem. Because whether you like it or not, and there is a fantastic Goresh tweet, and Goresh is sick. He's a very intelligent person, so I want to read that out a little bit later. But when it comes to like these sorts of problems, what you do is now you create a divide in the community. People are upset, people are frustrated, people are either looking at this as a positive, which I think I am now looking at it as a positive more than a negative. Like I said, I'm more upset about the game going down and the development team not being aware of their limitations, as opposed to the game actually being down. Sorry, I should have mentioned, like, I'm upset about the game going down because of the team not being aware of their limitations, opposed to the game just going down. But you've now created a divide where people are very upset and very frustrated at you as a development team. Then you have people that think that, hey, this is actually a pretty cool thing for the game because it exceeded everyone's expectations. But you also have problems where you're no longer making money. It's been two plus days now, I think it has been now. There's no revenue coming in. You're at a loss because you're spending all the money on development and fixing this data problem. People are going to have a bad taste in their mouth regardless of whether they think it's positive or not when the game props back up. You now have to come up with a way to remedy the situation. And remedying the situation is not only providing compensation, but it's also looking at things like, okay, the players couldn't complete TM. So does that mean that we should refund the players that pulled on the TM banner? I personally think that they should, because we were provided a product for a particular service and we were not provided that service. Hence, we should get a refund on our product that we invested in. On top of that, you had players that used tomes and tablets and dupes and level up materials that got consumed. do you have the capabilities of finding that out and then reversing it back and giving those players those items back? On top of that, what kind of compensation do you give because it's treasure map? Naturally, with treasure map, you can farm it a lot. You get your limit break materials. Right now, TM's kind of done. I think it's not in their best interest to after this to re-put treasure map back on after this whole maintenance is completed. I think that they should just end TM, give everyone a free copy of the character, and then honestly, I'm not even going to make an assumption of what they should provide. I personally think it should be... actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to cut back to this because I want to find a particular... There was a particular post made by Mats who I personally think was very fair to the actual compensation of what they should do. Here it is. So this is the post by Mats. Shout out Mats. I think this is a very fair, very, very fair overall reward. So my one at the very top there was, ideally with TM ending, everyone gets 10 mil point rewards, 100 shards, 50 medium crystals, 20 large limit break, and then 20 large limit break materials, 10k blue ticks, and 50 gems. That was my very conservative response. This was kind of before I read the letter and understood the situation, and I knew that the game wasn't going to come up anytime soon. Matt's provided a very fantastic idea. It was like, if team is cancelled, pool should be refunded, all rewards up to 10 mil, lots of limit break materials and tablets, etc. to compensate ranking. I agree with that 100%. I think it should be, honest to God, it should be at least 30 to 50 runs worth of materials and tablets and blue tickets should be provided to the players. At least 30. I understand that there is the caveat that not every player does 30 runs or 50 runs or 100 runs or 10 runs even, but it's kind of looking at it in terms of the future. You don't know that I might wake up tomorrow and do 30 treasure map runs. Whereas even though that's not normal for me, I might still do that. There are even players that do 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 nav levels. So you're cutting yourself at both ends here, where you can't provide too many runs worth of materials because then it seems like it's unfair for those that play a lot. But at the same time, you can't provide too few runs for people because then again, it is unfair for those that play a lot. Or maybe it's overachieving for those that don't play enough. So there has to be a balance there. Then I think that there should be, as Matt has mentioned here, at least 100 to 150 gem compensation, purely based upon the severity of the error. The severity of this error, though, that I find is that it's a positive, which is the craziest part. And I want to jump to this Goresh tweet real quick. This Goresh quote tweet. And he mentions, confused why people are upset about this. This is a good thing for this game. They clearly didn't expect the game to last this long, and honestly, I expect this may happen with Dokkan eventually. Yeah, it sucks to have maintenance last for days, but it is a necessary evil. I think that's the quintessential aspect of all of this, is that this whole problem, this whole situation, it is a necessary evil. It's what needs to happen for people to get kicked in the... Sometimes you need to get your legs chopped out underneath you to be able to be better next time. And I think that the game going down and this whole data problem, and I think right now the reason why they're taking a lot of time is naturally they need to come up with a compensation strategy to remedy the entire situation to be fair to players. Naturally, a lot of the time Treasure Cruiser's compensation strategies are very hit and miss. Sometimes they're very good, sometimes they're not so good. So hopefully they kind of find the right balance by providing players not only a lot of gems, but also limit break materials, tablets. For those that consumed items at the time, they are also provided those items back, because I think that's the most important part for me. Naturally, I didn't use anything. However, I think it's very important for any player that used an item, especially those that did multis. People that did multis while the error occurred, how are you going to remedy that? The gems got consumed, but the characters never were received. Are you going to provide them the gems back and the characters back? Are you just going to provide them the gems back? What if they pulled a new legend? Like, this is probably why it's going to take a long time. Obviously, data migration takes forever, especially with clearly they're going to a temp fix. So they're probably going to access like a hot server that's kind of there as like a backup or as a temp. I don't know how they're going to perform the strategy to transfer the data into this temp fix. But one thing that I've just recalled again, the problem for me is that what they're holding on to is such dead data. A lot of the data that Treasure Cruise is carrying is very dead data. I understand the data obviously would be like the user ID, what quests they've cleared, the level of the account, the gems, and obviously like what they play, what characters they use. They have a lot of data that they track, but a lot of the data is very dead data because you have accounts that haven't been accessed in maybe 6, 7, 8 years even. You have a lot of re-roll accounts that are rolled, they have a unique ID created, and then they aren't touched for a long time. And then you also have accounts that just kind of exist but don't do anything. And that one's probably not that strong of an argument, but at least the first two, the reroll accounts and then the accounts that haven't been used for a long period of time, you need to cull those from your data. I understand that you might have a situation where in either of those two options, someone might access that account again in future. I know that you could have somebody who hasn't played the game in 8 years relog back into that same account. However, you need to maybe put out a blanket statement and say, if your account age is, if the last time you logged in is greater than 5 years, we will be removing your data. Maybe that's the way you refresh it, and you do that once or twice a year. That way you're culling a large majority of players from your data sync, and you don't have a situation where your servers are overloaded with data and they can't handle it anymore. Is that the best possible strategy to take? Maybe not, but is that the way to protect your servers and ensure that you have the server capacity, and then the way the data is handled is to the T of the capacity that you have? I think that that's probably the best case scenario. And if you put these statements out there, it can be a prompt to those that haven't accessed the game in a while to maybe log back in. And if they want to keep their accounts but they don't want to play, for example, they can log back in and then stay logged off for another 5 years and then come back again. So it's really up to them as an individual. However, if you put out a blanket statement and say, we are culling accounts that have a login time, or the last login time is 5 years or greater, or just greater than 5 years in general. That way, it's a blanket prompt. You will cull such a large amount of accounts that are just absolutely dead data. And the reason I say dead data in particular is because it's not like you're gaining anything from these accounts existing. You already know what they played, you know what characters they had, you know what characters they used in that time period. But you know that data isn't useful anymore. The way that the game is played, the way that the puzzle aspect of the game works, the way that characters are released and how they're created, proceeds in the future of the game, it's completely different to what happened in the past. So those accounts, the data on those accounts isn't that valuable anymore. And I would personally argue isn't valuable, period. And I think you should just cull all of them and save yourself a lot of time and effort by having to come up with a new strategy. You probably should have a strategy in place regardless. And I think that at the end of the day, I really like how Goresh has put it by putting it as the maintenance that we have is a necessary evil. I really enjoy how that's said, because at the end of the day, it is a necessary evil for the betterment of the game. And it's also a necessary evil because it's a positive in a sense, right? It's a positive to know that Treasure Cruise has been doing so well and has so many players involved and is naturally still making a lot of money that a situation like this occurs. I just hope that whatever compensation strategy they come up with is fair and reasonable. I don't want like 10,000 gems. I mean, I do want 10,000 gems, but I know that that isn't reasonable. I just want enough of a compensation to say, hey, we recognize what's occurred. We apologize. Don't bring back Treasure Map. Let's move on. Let's move on to Kazuna, which is coming up soon. On top of that, we have New Year's is going to happen sometime soon. It's most likely going to be the Ichiban Kuji units that just released. Check my Twitter if you want to see them. Let's move on from Treasure Map. Let's put it aside. Let's get into this final section of the entire year and really go out of 2022 with an absolute blast, with some fantastic units and a good campaign. And look, you give every player 200 gems. That's fantastic for the New Year's celebration coming up. One thing that I want to mention at the very end though is that if in this data transfer I lose my gem count or I lose some aspect of my account, I will be quitting. That's just the blanket statement there. I will be quitting OPTC if I log back into my game in whatever time this maintenance takes, and I have a 0 gem count. I will be quitting the game, because I don't think that's fair to any of the players to remove their gems just because of your error in planning ahead. Not to end it on a bad note, but to just reiterate, this has occurred. It is a necessary evil, but it's a very positive thing for the game to know that we're doing so well. With that being said, kept it short and sweet, 20 minutes. That's a pretty short pretty short Poppy video. But with that being said, I've been Captain Poppy. Go subscribe, please. Go follow me, do all that kind of fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.